primaries, caucuses, convention, and other processes. As many of you are aware, the primary calendar and delegate selection have been rules topics people have debated for many, many years. In 2008, people felt as though the primary process started too early and ended much too quickly. Thus, the delegates to the 2008 convention adopted a rule allowing for a temporary committee to be formed to analyze and propose changes to the rules affecting the delegate selection process. That committee was named the Temporary Delegate Selection Committee, or TDSC for short. Some of you here today may have served on that committee. The TDSC produced meetings, held debates, and discussed different proposals dealing with the process by which states would select their delegates to the National Convention. At the conclusion of their meetings, the TDSC presented a plan to the RNC, which was adopted and which governed this past presidential cycle. As this committee is aware, the debate as to the best primary, calendar, and delegate selection process continues. As members of the Rules Committee, we are tasked with making well-thought-out rule amendments to facilitate the best possible primary process and calendar. To aid the Rules Committee in making those difficult decisions, I have appointed a subcommittee of the Rules Committee to focus solely on the primary calendar and the delegate selection rules. The subcommittee will have the very important role of reviewing how the 2012 primary process played out. It will also discuss and debate ways in which our rules can be amended to improve the primary process for 2016. This will be an open process where ideas are allowed to be fully explored and discussed. The subcommittee is prepared with a specific task and will report back to the full Rules Committee with suggestions as to ways our rules may be amended. As chairman of the Standing Committee on Rules, I will chair the subcommittee. I'll now announce the appointment to the committee, and this is done under Robert's Rules of Order, page 495, paragraph E, as indicated. The members of the committee shall be Sean Steele, National Committeeman from California; Randy Evans, National Committeeman from Georgia; Carol Mumford, National Committeeman from Rhode Island; Henry Barber, National Committeeman, Mississippi; Bob Bennett, National Committeeman, Ohio; Enid Mickelson, National Committeewoman from Utah; Solomon Yu, National Committeeman from Oregon; Steve Dupre, National Committeeman from New Hampshire; Pat Rogers, National Committeeman from New Mexico; Steve Ministeri, State Chairman from Texas; Jeff Kent, National Committeeman from Washington State; Peter Fabian, National Committeeman from Florida; and James Smack, National Committeeman from Nevada. The ex officio members of this committee will be Reince Priebus, RNC Chair; myself, Bruce Ash, National Committeeman from Arizona and Rules Committee Chair; Louis Pope, National Committeeman from Maryland and Rules Committee Vice Chair; Demetra DeMonte, National Committeewoman from Illinois and RNC Secretary; and finally John Ryder, National Committeeman from Tennessee and RNC General Counsel. The subcommittee members will be asked to stay after the Rules Committee meeting here today adjourns, at which point the first meeting of the subcommittee will convene. Now, if we can, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the consideration of Rule 12 amendments as we move into the business of the committee. The next item of business is to consider properly submitted rule amendments filed with the RNC Counsel's Office. And if you would go to the microphone, please.
Dr. Fisher from the state of North Carolina. I thought that under the informal discussion of rules, we were actually going to sit here and discuss some of these rules rather than just the ones that referred to the primary. When we had them in the last time, we said that we would go through each rule and discuss each rule, not just those that related to the primary. And so I came prepared to discuss rules 1 through 11, which is what this is.
Thank you. Your points are very well taken, Dr. Fisher. After we have our formal procedural discussion on the 3 Rule 12 amendments, we'll move into an informal session where at that time we will cover Rules 1 through 11, and yourself, Dr. Fisher, as well as the other members will have ample opportunity to talk at that time. As I said, the next item of business is to consider properly submitted rule amendments filed with the RNC Council's office in accordance with Rule 12 of the Rules of the Republican Party. We have 3 such amendments eligible for consideration by the committee today. It shall now be in order to move adoption of any of these proposed amendments. The amendments have been distributed and will be projected on the screen in the front of the room. Upon an amendment being properly brought and seconded, discussion will ensue. Amendments are made to the original amendment will be typed by the council's office and put up on the screen. Let's now proceed with the amendments offered under Rule 12. Is there a motion to amend the rules?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
I actually recognize Mr. Blackwell from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kindly submitted an amendment to Rule 16C2, which we can bring it up on the screen. This is an amendment to which I have sent letters to all the members of the committee.
Mr. Blackwell, if I can interrupt you, just let's go ahead and put it up as a motion, and I'll ask for a second at that time. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Mr. Blackwell, please proceed.
It reads in Rule 16C2, change the word may to shall. This amendment would restore the wording that was in effect on this topic in the 2012 election. The wording that included the word shall was the principal result of about 2 decades worth of concern by members of the Republican National Committee about the tendency for the front-loading of the delegate selection process. The great concern expressed over all those years was that we were moving towards having a national primary. In his introductory remarks, Chairman Ash mentioned that people were concerned that the selection started too early and ended too late. My recollection of it was that virtually all the concern was that it started too early and states were leapfrogging. The effect of this amendment would be to restore the rules to prohibit the holding of winner-take-all primaries in March. The amendment that was passed at the Convention Rules Committee, changing the word shall to may, completely did away, therefore, with this prohibition on winner-take-all primaries in March, and saying that states selecting their delegates in March may allocate their delegates by a proportional method, completely vitiated the rule. The rule, as it currently stands, you could eliminate that whole 16C2 and it would have no effect on the meaning of the rules. It's extraordinarily important that we avoid a national primary. A national primary would happen if so many states decided to hold winner-take-all primaries that on one day or within a few days, somebody would pile up an insurmountable lead in winner-take-all operations, and that would really end, for all practical purposes, the nomination contest. Highly undesirable. Highly undesirable for a number of reasons. Number one, the media can make the candidate a celebrity in a very short period of time, and not giving enough time for candidates to be properly evaluated. Number two, a winner-take-all primary gives an enormous advantage to very wealthy candidates who can flood sufficient numbers of states and conceivably mislead people into thinking how good a candidate that person would have been. And finally, there is an extraordinarily important role that the primaries have, and that is to allow a period of testing. Traditionally, a testing in a wide variety of geographical areas over a sufficiently long period of time that the candidates get tested in a wide variety of circumstances. I think that this is a very helpful thing, and we need to have it. We could, in a national primary situation, elect a candidate in some fluke situation, and that would be very bad. This was the considered wisdom of the Republican National Committee as a result of literally decades of wrestling with the problem. And I think it should be restored. And I urge support of this amendment, which must, in order to be enacted through this process, has to pass this committee by a majority vote, and then would have to be passed by 75% vote of the entire membership of the National Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Evans.
Randy Evans, National Committeeman from Georgia. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I have a point of inquiry, which is whether this amendment falls within the jurisdiction of the subcommittee that you just formed to study basically how all of these various rules will work together so that we don't end up with contradictory results.
That's my interpretation of what?
Based on that response, I would move to refer this particular amendment to the subcommittee.
There's a motion to refer to the subcommittee. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Ryder. Is there any debate?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder.
Mr. Chairman, this may come as a shock to members of this committee, but I agree with virtually everything Mr. Blackwell just said about this amendment. I participated in many of those debates, both in this committee and in the temporary delegate selection committee, that introduced this language to our rules. I think it served a very useful purpose in 2012, and it might well serve a useful purpose in 2016. But there might again be other ways to address the problems that this language is attempting to address, that of avoiding the disastrous consequences of a national primary. And that is why I think the chair has been very wise in appointing a subcommittee, which I think will function somewhat like the temporary delegate selection committee did, and have the opportunity to review all of the rules affecting the presidential primary process in toto, and to make sure that they work in harmony with each other. We've seen the unfortunate results of adopting rules piecemeal. In fact, I have a proposed amendment later on today's agenda to Rule 17. There is a conflict between the language in Rule 17A and 17F. 17A imposes on a state violating the calendar rules the penalty of reducing its delegation down to 9 delegates plus the 3 members of the Republican National Committee. 17F imposes upon a state which violates the calendar rules the additional penalty of barring the 3 national committee members from serving as delegates. Now, clearly, that language has to be reconciled, but that's an example of the kind of inconsistency that you get when you approach this process in a piecemeal fashion. So I think we would be well served by referring Mr. Blackwell's amendment, my amendment, and the other amendment before the body today to the subcommittee to be reviewed over time and to be reported back to us either in the January meeting or the spring meeting next year. This will also enable the subcommittee to coordinate its proposed suggestions with the recommendations of the Convention Planning Committee, which created under Rule 10G. And the Convention Planning Commission is instructed to report back by the spring meeting next year. So by bringing all of this together, the hope would be that we would have a coordinated, harmonious set of rules that would actually accomplish the purpose that we all see, which is to nominate a Republican candidate who will uphold our principles and win the election. And I think we are best served by doing that in a deliberative fashion, and therefore I support Mr. Evans' motion to refer to the subcommittee.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell, would you like to speak?